Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. This morning, we have the opportunity to remember and continue to grieve the loss of Patsy Meyers. And our hearts and our condolences go out to Tom and Terry and Rick and their extended family and friends and all of you who are here this morning. We remember and join our hearts together and give comfort to her family. Mourning is a time filled with emotions and many memories, both bitter and sweet. And we begin our service this morning with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Patsy's life with our millennia-old tradition of the Jewish people and the eternity of God. Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, wrote, "The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of the world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearn for yet another respite from the final summons, and how we yearn to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives. Yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this moment. Be near with them when light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing." There's a traditional blessing prayer that is said for Jewish women on Friday evening from their beloved, and it's called Eshet Hayil, and it talks about how she is a woman of valor. And I have an interpretation of that. I didn't have the opportunity to meet Patsy, but I had a great conversation with Tom and Terry, and it sounds like she truly fit this bill for all of those who truly knew her. A mother of generations, a woman of valor. She is precious in the gifts that she has given to her family. Her children have found trust and truth in these gifts, and she follows in the patterns for which she was taught. She is robed in strength and dignity. She smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. We benefit and learn from her wisdom. May she always be credited for the fruit of her labor and her achievements, and may she live on in glory. We'll turn now to the pamphlet in front of you. Psalm 121 is one that offers us comfort to answer questions that we might have in these moments of grief and these moments of remembrance. When we feel lost, we might ask ourselves, from where will our help come? How will it be that we can get through this time and any other difficult time? And the psalmist in Psalm 121 offers this idea. I'll sing it first in Hebrew, and then we will join together in the English. Esayenai el harim, me'ayin yavo Ezri, me'im Adonai, say, Shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help will come from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. God will not allow your foot to slip. Your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Eternal is your keeper. The Lord is the shade at your right hand. The sun shall not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all evil. God will protect your being. The Lord will guard you, coming and going, from this time forth and forever. O Lord, God of the spirits of all flesh, you are close to the hearts of the sorrowing, to strengthen and console them in the warmth of your love and with the assurance that the human spirit is enduring and indestructible. Even as we pray for perfect peace for those lives who have ended, so do we ask you to give comfort and courage to the living. May the knowledge of your nearness be our strength, O God, for you are with us at all times, in joy and sorrow, in light and darkness, in life and death. Another psalm that we have that is meant to give us comfort is the Psalm 23, which is all about how God is with us personally. We'll join together in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul, leads me in the right paths for the sake of God's name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. According to a legend, there was a man who was incredibly jealous of this famous Spanish rabbi named Ibn Gavriel. He was a genius, and he had many accomplishments. This man was so jealous that he killed him in the fit of jealousy and buried his body beneath a tree. The legend continues that sometime after, people noticed that a fig tree in the man's garden was bearing particularly large and luscious fruit, none like they had seen anywhere else. Curiosity was aroused, and people of the neighborhood dug up the tree in order to discover the secret of this remarkable fertility. And then it was discovered that Ibn Gavriel was buried there. This legend from a long time ago teaches in symbolic fashion an important lesson about life. Our lives are riper, fuller, and more fruitful when righteous men and women live good lives. The soil is enriched by the deeds of their loving kindness and their mercy. All of life becomes lovelier when it is watered by streams of memory and fed by the cool springs of recollection and remembrance. Memories of a life of goodness, of generosity, of family experiences enjoyed in common are woven into the fabric of life and become a blessing to us, which remains until our very end of our days. And it is such memories that we have of Patsy Meyers, who not only accepted life as good, but tried to make it better. As I said before, I didn't have the opportunity to meet Patsy, so much of what I have here is based on a lovely conversation that I had with Tom and Terry. Patsy was born in Cleveland, Ohio, on September 10th, 1927, where she grew up with her parents Milton and Hannibal Bear Emmerich and her sister Betty in Shaker Heights. As a child, she loved swimming and diving and vacationing in Florida with her family. Life wasn't always easy, though, and at the height of the Depression, Patsy lived for about 5 years in Akron with her relatives until her family could get back on their feet. During World War II, her family took in a young girl and her family from Germany who were seeking refuge from the Nazis in Germany. And as a late teen, she attended Colby Junior College in New London, New Hampshire. Well, she graduated in 1948 with an associate's degree in commercial science. After college, Patsy came back to Cleveland and worked at the Cleveland Steel and Wire Company. In 1951, Patsy fell in love with Milford Meyers in Toledo, and they met on a blind date. They were married by the famous Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver in Cleveland, and later that year, they honeymooned in Jamaica. Tom shared with me that Patsy's main priority in her life was her family. She was a devoted mother and loving wife. Their house was a place where all of their friends could gather, some for a few hours and some for a few nights in a row. And she would make her famous icebox cake and cook macaroni and cheese. And Patsy and Milford's friends grew closer due to their membership at Glengarry, where Patsy expressed her love of tennis. She played until she was about 80 years old, which is quite a feat. Their winters were spent on adventures in Sarasota, where they also made good friends. Even though Patsy wouldn't have described herself as actively Jewish, she cared about Jewish causes and participated in the Federation and the Temple Sisterhood and Hadassah. She was always one to play games, even in her later years. Patsy loved playing bridge and mahjong. As Tom and Rick grew older, Patsy and Milford were supportive parents who wanted whatever was best for their sons, and wherever that meant that they went. So they wanted them to go where their hearts took them and live really good lives. After her beloved husband died, she showed strength by being satisfied with her life. Even as it got smaller and less busy in the later years, she was known to read books and watch the news. She continued to care about her appearance, which I understand was always impeccable, and she stayed busy and active by playing bridge with her friends. Patsy's memory will live on like a robust fig tree, offering shade and comfort and sustenance and lasting memories to those who knew her. Zichrona livracha, may her memory be a loving blessing. Amen. Now I'd like to invite up Tom to share not only his words, but those of a few others as well.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, for the kind words and the prayers and everything. And thank everybody here for being here and those on live stream land that are listening and watching. And hey, wow, where are all these adults come from? I'm used to being in front of like 30 first graders. So I might have to tone this a little different. Anyway, I want to start out first with reading some words that my first cousin, David Firth, who is my mom, Betty's, one of her sons, had some words he'd like to share. He lives in D.C., but he grew up in Cleveland, and he goes there a lot. David writes, although I'm sure I met Aunt Patsy when I was born, my first memories of her were at age 6 years old. I was the ring bearer at her wedding with Milford. We have the picture of that, so cool. The ceremony was performed by Abba Hillel Silver in Cleveland. I think her interest in diving into a pool at the country club was even more than her sister, Betty, my mother, David's mother, was a factor in my becoming a competitive diver. Although throughout my life, I spent a lot of time with her at many family events, as well as many annual summer visits to Toledo, where I would spend a couple of weeks living with her and the family. She was a kind, gentle, loving lady. She was a woman dedicated to her family and raised two very accomplished sons. Thanks. She's always been and will remain in my thoughts as important, and I will miss her very much. David Firth. Okay. The next thing I'm going to read is from my brother, Rick, who's now in Portland, Oregon, watching this, live streaming. And he unfortunately cannot be here because of ongoing health issues that he has. But he did have some thoughts that he wanted me to share with you about Mom. Rick says, one thing that particularly stands out about Mom is that wherever she went, and no matter who she encountered, she always made friends. And that served as a perfect role model for me in acquiring those necessary social skills myself. When I was a kid, I was very shy. And I'm thankful that she pushed me in a loving and supportive way to try new things and face various challenges that were beyond my comfort zone, like trying out for Little League, going to overnight camp, which, by the way, was 2 hours from Toledo, and it was for 8 weeks, and Rick was only 9 years old when this happened. That's where I learned how to play guitar. If you know my brother, he's played guitar for a long time. And we got started on a ukulele, by the way, that my grandma gave us, which I still have. And that opened up for Rick a whole new world of being a musician and entertainer for his whole life. And it was Mom that taught me how to ride a bike, drive a car, me too, at LaSalle's parking lot. Never forget that. I tell Terry every time we go by. To learn how to swim, ice skate, play various card games like Crazy Eights, Gin Rummy. And in grade school, it was Mom who ensured that I was well-nourished and always packed my lunchbox with lots of nutritious food and yummy treats and snacks. Mom cared for me in many ways that only a loving mother can do. She took care of me when I was very sick. On one occasion that I remember, when I was young, I remember that Mom drove me to the hospital to have my stomach pumped out after discovering that I had raided the medicine cabinet and taken a substantial amount of prescription medicine by accident. Probably thought they were candy. That was not fun at all. But again, Mom came through for me. Another memorable anecdote that comes to mind was when I was 3 years old, and Mom brought home my new baby brother, Tom. She brought him home to me from the hospital and presented him to me exclaiming, "Isn't he cute?" But inside, I was thinking, uh-oh, I might have some serious competition here. And this might not be a good thing. But she handled it with grace, and she realized that I felt a bit threatened, and she was able to reassure me and remind me that I was still loved and very important, and I thank her for that. Regarding my many travel adventures we shared as a family over the years, I'll never forget when we embarked on a river rafting adventure along the Truckee River in California in 1982, which was basically when I came out to Portland, as it turned out. And on this trip, Rick says that he appointed himself as the rowing captain on this rafting trip. But instead of helping us navigate a safe passage, he unwittingly misdirected us at every turn until we found ourselves pinned up against a bridge abutment with the water rushing in at all sides. And when this happened, Mom fell out of the raft. My dad looked over. He was still in the raft. He said, "Patsy, what are you doing?" She's out of the raft. I don't know how she did this. She had my camera. She knew how important the camera was to me. She kept it dry. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she did it. Anyway, she kept it from getting wet. But luckily, after some harrowing moments, we were able to break free and make our way to the shore to regroup and dry out. I'll never forget Mom's all-important contribution, which was to calmly instruct us to all remove the waterlogged dollar bills from our wallets and carefully place them side by side on rocks to dry out. We obeyed every word, and we were laughing hysterically at this. And that prevented us also from going bankrupt for the rest of the trip. And finally, from a very soft spot in my heart, I can recall many times as a young child when she sang a short Irish lullaby to help me get settled in for sleep. And it goes like this. Have you ever walked into an Irishman's shanty where money was scarce and whiskey was plenty, where the door on the shanty was locked with a latch and a three-legged chair and a table to match? Oh, dee idly, 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 oh. Join in if you want. Oh, dee idly, 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 oh. I love you very much, Mom, and may peace always be with you. Love, Rick. I have some other words from one of my best buddies in the whole world. We're just incredible buddies. My friend Richard Webb, who lived a block away from me, along with some other great buddies that were always over at the house. And Rich was like another brother and kind of another son with some of these other buddies with Mom. And he had some words that he wanted to say. And I think this sums it up for a lot of friends out there. I first met Patsy Meyers 64 years ago, although I have no recollection of our initial meeting. Tommy and I were in nursery school together at Gateway School, not the one on Bancroft. This was the one near the former Wright Greenhouse and Old Orchard School. We often reminisced with friends that we've known since age 4. As was in the case in the 1960s, we all walked to school unassisted and unprotected by our parents. Can you believe that? We rode bikes in the neighborhood and beyond, and basically ran free, often finding refuge to hang out at a certain friend's house. The Meyers house. That was one of those critically important houses that we all hung out at. The formula for why the Meyers house is not known. Sure, it's because your best friend lives there, but it was something else that just felt simply good and inviting. I believe in large part this was because Mr. and Mrs. Meyers naturally created an open environment where all were welcome. In the case of Mrs. Meyers, she was always present with a twinkle in her eye and the abundance of food for hungry young boys like us. As a parent of 2 boys and 1 girl myself, I can attest to the wonderment of kids' discovery, and I believe that was the case with Patsy. It did not matter if we came in with mud and snow from playing football at Goddard Field, or we wanted to just sit and talk in any room in their house. She created an environment that made us feel comfortable and loved unconditionally. It really was special. Also, she was the type of friend's mother who was a good listener and would allow you to speak freely no matter what the subject was, and often with no strict opinion unless we were way off base. I can truly say that I spent a lot of time in their house, and I loved it. As we got older, around ages 10 to 14, those wonderful teenage years, Mrs. Meyers was the mom who drove us to such places as Ottawa Park, Westland Lanes, if you still remember Westland Lanes, University Lanes, Par 3, Putt-Putt, and other golf courses in the area. We were big golfers. Oh, and the conversations in the car and in the house were epic and memorable. She continued to have a smile on her face and that twinkle in her eyes. During college, and after I moved away from Toledo, she remained true to what we grew up with. She was inquisitive and supportive of what was happening in our many friends' lives. And after Mom passed away, I remember when her mom passed away, my grandma, Richard says, I remember how Patsy and her sister Betty remained physically connected to their mother by converting her mother's mink stole coat into two beautiful, soft, and furry stuffed teddy bears. We still have them. It's so cool. You could tell this helped with the transition of losing a parent and provided peace and solace and provided a glimpse into her inner feelings. I recently visited Mrs. Meyers in August 2024. She still had that twinkle in her eyes, and she did. I remember when Rich came. Thank you, Patsy, for being such a great part of my life over the past 64 years. From Richard Webb. And now it's up to me. Wow, 97 years. You know, that spans from, I looked it up, it spans from Calvin Coolidge, who was president when Mom was born in 1927, to what we have as AI now. And you can even throw in a few Roosevelts and a landing on the moon in between. Well, as you guys know, there's nothing quite like a mom. You all know that. But I have a story to tell you. When I was teaching first grade about 20 years ago, I had one of my first grade boys come up to me and he accidentally called me Mom. But when you realize what he said to me, he became so embarrassed, he didn't know what to do. I pulled him aside and I said, don't worry about it. I said, you know, if you had called me Dad, that would have been like unbelievable, amazing. But you called me Mom. I said, that's the biggest compliment that you could ever give me because nothing compares to a mom. It seemed to console him. Well, Mom and I had a real soul connection. In fact, we are birthday twins. Can you believe it? On my birthday, I was her birthday present. She always said that I was the best birthday present she ever got. She better say that. Well, I didn't exactly come wrapped up in a bow, but I was ready to go, with no instruction manual to go by, but she and Dad somehow figured it out. So let me tell you a few things that we all shared together. In many ways, Mom was my beacon of light. She helped instill into me the tools I needed to navigate through a successful life. She was always there for me through thick and thin, ups and downs, and she always went the extra mile, along with Dad, to be supportive and encouraging, whether it was some what I considered a life-changing decision or figuring out what I should wear to high school prom that night. She was indispensable. She and Dad celebrated my accomplishments and the hard work that I put in along the way. And I know the same can be said for my brother, Rick. One of the biggest opportunities that Mom provided for me, along with Dad, was when they both encouraged me to study abroad my senior year in Luxembourg. It was an overseas program as part of Miami University, Miami of Ohio. That experience totally changed my life in so many ways. I learned to become a truly independent person and really gain a true sense of myself and who I was in the world. The same can be said for Mom and Dad's unwavering support and encouragement for me to move to Portland, Oregon in 1982, where I spent nearly the entirety of my teaching career and created a strong community of lifelong friends that have truly become family for me. And Mom, along with Dad, shared part of that life with me and Rick, with their countless visits to Portland and to the Northwest. So here's a few of those stories. When they visited in Portland, we had tons of fun. We had numerous potlucks. Some of you know the potlucks that I had here in Toledo. And there was always food and great music going on. We went to restaurants, local events, and they loved it, all the times they came out. We also got to travel to the Oregon coast, the Mount Hood area, and other places. And they were willing to try some new things, even if it was a bit out of their comfort zone. One night, while staying at Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood, we went to the very top of the lodge. This was at night, and you could soak in a jacuzzi hot tub. We soaked in that hot tub, and it was snowing fiercely. And it was so fun as we sat there that while we were sitting there, the snow grew to about 2 inches on everybody's head, and we all started laughing. A few days later, we went to Canita Hot Springs, an Indian reservation, and it was about 20 degrees outside, but Mom and I decided to go swimming in a heated outdoor pool anyway. She loved it. One summer, we hiked up Black Butte Mountain. I'd never done a hike up a mountain with my folks, but they went along with it. We were huffing and puffing along the way, and of course the reward was that panoramic, beautiful view of the Cascades. It was breathtaking. So needless to say, Mom and Dad were pretty outgoing and adventurous, and I was really proud of that. Another trip, in the late 70s, we were camping in a tent in the Smoky Mountains. All 4 of us were in the same tent. And we woke up to a couple of white skunks that were outside the tent. So we sat there and we watched for a little while, and then they took off. So finally, we got out of the tent, and Mom noticed a mouse scampering near our tent. Without even thinking, she grabbed a small broom that she found, and she swept it away as it tumbled down the sloped pathway, and we all started laughing with delight. Well, even at age 68, I guess I'm still a mama's boy. In some ways, Mom and I were partners in crime. We did a lot of things together. I kind of was the daughter by default that she never had. You got to remember, she was surrounded by all males. Even our dog was male, Flash. So I was willing to, kind of bend a little bit. So I was the touchy-feeling one. And I went shopping for clothes, for food, and once, actually more than once, even shopping for bras. I know, TMI. But I just went with it. In fact, a few years ago, Terry and I went bra shopping with Mom at Dillard's. But that's another story for another time. My brother Rick, this is something that was great with Rick and the family. He made my mother laugh hysterically like nobody else. I don't know how he did it. The faces he made, some clever quip that he made or something, and my mom would nearly choke, trying not to pee in her pants, with laughter as she ran into another room. But Mom was the core protector and provider for the family. She kept us healthy, she kept us well-fed and organized. Well, Terry's still working on that. She organized birthday parties, made travel plans. We were growing out of clothes, she kept buying them. As Richard said, they took us to putt-putt and par 3 and everywhere. School projects, homework, all of our physical and emotional needs, but she still found time and energy to make all the breakfasts, all the lunches, and delicious dinners we had every night. I don't know how moms do it. Mom was a great cook. Her dishes were amazing. They were varied, too many to mention. But my favorite was easy, as the rabbi said. Her macaroni and cheese was like butter. It was to die for. And whenever I came home from Portland, it was such a treat. She always had it there waiting for me. At Thanksgiving, she had all the usual fixings for Thanksgiving that were great. But for me, what made it special, and it only came at this point, was the icebox cake made with the famous wafers and the real whipped cream. At Passover, she made a farfel that she whipped up. I've never had anything like it since, at any Passover or any other place. As a youngster, I remember, as a little kid, something that we did all the time. When Rick and I would get ready to bed, put on our pajamas and do everything, we'd go to the bed and I'd stand by the door by the light switch. And I would yell into my parents' room. Rick and I both did this. We'd say, "You can love me up now." And they heard that. This was just like every night. And they came. My mom always came. My dad sometimes came. My mom always came, with plenty of hugs and kisses for everybody. Yeah, we were snugglers. Friends. You've heard a lot about the Friends. Their hospitality was incredible. It was the prime gathering spot to hang out. And they included everybody in any of the family activities, whatever we were doing. And she made everybody, and my dad too, made them feel like they were part of the family, whether it was watching sport games, playing games in the yard, New Year's Eve parties, New Year's Day brunch parties after New Year's Eve. It was really fun. Mom was an incredible athlete also. She loved playing tennis. I have lots of memories of going out with her to Glengarry, which is now Stone Oak. And I can't tell you how many times we went out there to swim and play tennis and golf. Mom didn't play golf, but she played tennis. And she was good. She was a good tennis player. Yeah. And she loved playing doubles with her friends. And I played with her too, and it was a blast. She was great at the net. Jerry will tell you. And even my friends, some of them here, know about this. They enjoyed playing tennis with her. She had an active social life. She had a tight-knit group of friends, the Thalls, the Zimmermans, the Truhalfs. Some of you are here. And as a kid, and they were in Maj groups. They played Maj and bridge weekly, switching around from different houses. I always loved visiting and talking with them, and always broke into it in between games. But what I loved most, was I wanted to get some of that yummy chopped liver that was over there by them. So I would go and I would scarf some of that and cheese and all these other nibbly treats. Speaking of food, Mom always loved going out for meals. My dad always said, "Patsy, you're a good fresser." Fresser means a good eater. And she was. We would go to Rosie's, J. Alexander's, the Colony, the old Loma Linda's, an airport, and of course, the original Pancake House. She loved the German pancake and the continental crepes. Mom and Dad loved snowbirding in Sarasota. They had a very active life there. I loved sharing it with them, usually during winter and summer breaks. Winter and spring breaks. And we got to see all sorts of other family members there too. I used to go swimming with my mom in the Gulf. She loved that. She loved swimming. Unlike my dad, she was very comfortable in the water, and she became playful, kind of like a kid. And she was really embracing life. I think she forgot all of her troubles when she was in the water swimming. Afterwards, we would lay on the beach together and we'd talk about anything and everything as the sun slowly dropped. We did a trip in 2002 to Hawaii, and we all went snorkeling. And I remember snorkeling with Mom and looking at all the gorgeous fish. And she was like a little kid. I hadn't seen that. I'd never snorkeled with her before. So that was really fun. But the best trip of all was the trip we did in 1998 to Africa. We went to Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. And this is how it went. It was a family trip. My dad was 75, and my mom was 70. The origin of the trip began when I got a call from my dad saying that he was thinking of doing a trip with my mom to Africa and going on safaris. He loved animals, and he watched all those Animal Kingdom shows. I said to him, "Dad, if that's something you want to do before you die, I think you should do it." So I waited a couple weeks. About 2 weeks later, he called me, and he said that he was starting to plan it. to plan the trip, but he wanted to invite me and Rick to come along too. We didn't know we were going to go, but of course we said yes. But there was one problem. When he told Mom about it, her first response was, "No, I'm not going." And if you knew my mom, that was her first response to a lot of things she wasn't sure of. So I told Dad, I said, Mom, when she says no, it doesn't mean no. It just means pause. She just wants to think about it. I said, just tell her, Dad, that you're going with the boys. She'll go. And of course she did. Well, after the trip started, I think we were in Botswana for a few days, and after having a few safaris under our belt, reluctant Mom, who didn't really want to go, ended up loving it. In fact, we would get new travelers to join us on these safaris. And the new travelers would say something like, "Oh, look, there's a cheetah." Mom would say, "That's not a cheetah. It's not really a cheetah. It's actually a leopard. You have to look at the distinct pattern of the dots on the back to identify the difference." Or she would say, "Oh, make sure you don't stand up in that Land Rover, because if you do, if there was a pride of lions going by, if you stand up, then you might be threatened. But if you sit down, they'll just think you're part of the Land Rover." So Mom was like another tour guide. She loved it. This carried on for the remainder of the trip. In closing, I want to say that Mom was a superlative daughter to her parents, sister to her sister Betty, an aunt, a wife, a mother, and a friend. I'm so fortunate that during this last 5 years, this journey in Toledo, of watching my mom with Terry go through so many changes and phases with the dementia she had, and slowly losing the mom that I really knew. There were lots of difficult times, but there were also some sweet and special moments. I learned a lot during this journey. I learned a lot about myself, life's constant challenges, and changing nature over time. It helped me become a better human being. It was really a journey that we all traveled together. And I want to also thank all the wonderful caregivers at Parkcliffe. They were amazing, and I don't know how they did it, but they did. When Mom passed a few weeks ago, two significant things happened. One was on the way to Parkcliffe after she had passed. Terry and I were driving on Richards Road between Door and Hill, and we're driving along, cold day, and out of nowhere, there was this deer in front of the road. And it just stopped, and it looked at us. We stopped the car. Terry and I looked at each other. We waited a few more seconds. And then out of nowhere, another deer came by to join this deer, and they both stopped, and they both looked at us. And then they sauntered off into the woods. Terry and I both looked at each other, and we said, "That's your mom and dad. They're here to tell us that they're together, and everything will be fine." So that was a real special moment, just on the way to see her. Another thing that happened on the way when we got there is we saw a couple of the residents that were there. And if you've been to a dementia community, you know that, it's just a very different kind of place. And there were particular two of the residents there. One was basically nonverbal. And somehow they knew what was going on with Mom the last couple days. Well, anyway, and they were really concerned. You could tell they were really concerned. They somehow knew what was going on. Anyway, I went in to see Mom and say my goodbyes to her. Her cheeks were still warm. Said my goodbyes, and I went out and I sat on this little love seat. And one of these women was the one who's nonverbal, sat next to me, and she grabbed my hand. And I thought that was so sweet that she did that. She knew something, was going on. And I said, "You were my mom's friend, right? You're going to miss her." And she just went like this. And out of nowhere, her mouth opened, and she said, "Your mom." I was stunned. This is a woman who doesn't talk. And anyway, that was one of the sweetest moments that I could have had at that time. So anyway, I just want to make sure that I let you all know I'm so grateful that you're here and that you came. It's a real, it means a lot to me and the family. And thank you all for listening in, if you're listening and watching. And thanks for being here.
This time I'd like to invite everyone to please rise for the memorial prayer. El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Amtsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utahorim Harakia Masirim Et Nishmat Yakira Shalcha Leholama Barachamim Yasireha Beseter Knafav Leholamim Beitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Unachalata V'tanuach B'shalom al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to our loved one who has entered eternity. Master of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. The mourner's Kaddish is on the back. Join together. Yit gadol v'yit kadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agalal v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mivorach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemed kudusha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. This concludes our service this morning. I would like to invite everyone to the lounge for a bite to eat, and a reminder that Shiva is tomorrow evening. They will be welcoming guests from 3 to 9 p.m. With potential 5 o'clock minyan if people will be there at that time. Thank you, and my condolences again. Thank you.